what's an asset, what's a liability, and why it's important to know the difference. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm going to tell you over here. My name is Adam, this is Steady Invest, and this is episode 2. So thank you to everyone that watched the first video and subscribed and liked it. Pretty awesome. You guys are my day ones. So why assets, why liabilities, why does it matter? One of the first books I read regarding finance was called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and in my opinion it's a fantastic first book to read when getting into the realm of finances and managing your own money, and it gives you a different perspective of how to look at money. It's one of those books where I read it twice. So the first time I read it, it kind of opened my mind like in so many ways, but in the second time I read it, it's like when you watch a movie for the second time and you catch on to things you didn't catch the first time, like, oh, I know why they did that, or I didn't notice that the first time. That's what this book did to me. I read it this past summer, maybe a month ago or so, and it hit me back with like, oh, I get this now. Because I've learned so much in the past few months, it kind of tied everything together. There are so many gems in this book, but the one message he tries to drive home and just nail in your brain over and over again is making sure you know what an asset is and what a liability is. Because if you do truly understand the difference between the two, it'll be the difference between achieving financial wealth and not. This is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. So I really like this paragraph. To me, it kind of summarizes what's the point of all this? Why bother, investing? Why not just make a bunch of money, spend it, just save your money? And what's the point? What's the point of all this? What's the point of buying assets, buying liabilities? So often in the real world, it's not the smart who get ahead, but the bold. In my personal experience, your financial genius requires both technical knowledge as well as courage. If fear is too strong, the genius is suppressed. In my classes, I strongly urge students to learn to take risks, to be bold, and to let their genius convert that fear into power and brilliance. It works for some and just terrifies others. I have come to realize that for most people, when it comes to the subject of money, they would rather play it safe. I have had to field questions such as, why take risks? Why should I bother developing my financial IQ? Why should I be financially literate? And I answer, just to have more options. And that's just it, guys, just to have more options. So chances are we all have dreams and that we want to someday fulfill, or whatever it may be. And whether that's to travel the world or, build orphanages around the world or whatever, have a huge house, whatever. A big variable or something that you need in order to get that started or to fulfill those dreams is money, right? And that's just it. The more financially literate you are, the more foundation and the smarter decisions you make, and just the theory and knowing these things will help you be able to achieve those dreams by making smart decisions in your life now before you dig the hole too late. So anyway, let's continue over here, guys. So why bother developing your financial IQ? Because if you do, you will prosper greatly. And if you don't, this period of time will be a frightening one. It will be a time of watching some people move boldly forward while others cling to worn-out life preservers. Moving on down, I find so many people struggling today, often working harder simply because they cling to old ideas. They want things to be the way they were, and they resist change. I know people who are losing their jobs or their houses, and they blame technology or the economy or their boss. So it's never them, obviously, right? So sadly, they fail to realize that they might be the problem. Old ideas are the biggest liability. It is a liability simply because they fail to realize that while that idea or way of doing something was an asset yesterday is gone. And I guess this is kind of more than just financial advice. It's life advice too. Everything is your own responsibility, right? Is learning to be financially literate. I mean, they didn't teach you in school. It's on you to learn for yourself, right? And figure out what's the correct information and what's the wrong information, and make decisions for yourself as to what will help you become financially successful later on. So I want to move on to page, I believe it's 37. Yes. Okay. So this is the main point. Okay, assets versus liabilities. Let's get to it. So, rich people acquire assets. The poor and middle class acquire liabilities that they think are assets. So, rule number 1, you must know the difference between an asset and a liability, and buy assets. So, if you want to be rich, this is all you need to know. That's a bold statement right there. It is rule number 1, period. It is the only rule, period. This may sound absurdly simple, but most people have no idea how profound this rule is. Most people struggle financially because they do not know the difference between an asset and a liability. Rich people acquire assets, the poor and the middle class acquire liabilities. that they think are assets, said Rich Dad. And that's to me, that's huge. Is something so simple. The simple things in life really aren't that simple. Really, when you have to sometimes really analyze things. I was talking to one of my friends actually recently, and he was telling me he's just been micro analyzing so many things happening. Just why do I do this? Why do I do that? And sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's bad if you overanalyze, but sometimes it's okay to analyze those simple small things, right? Because again, here it seems so simple, but it's not. So again, let's see why that is. An asset puts money in my pocket, period. A liability takes money out of my pocket, period. So this is the cash flow of an asset. So again, here we see, guys, the balance sheet. So again, it balances your assets, it balances your liabilities, and then here you see your income statement. So what's coming in and then what's going out. So as you see here, again, remember, assets put money in your pocket. Cool? The cash flow pattern of an asset. The money's flowing into the income box or column. This is the cash flow pattern of a liability. Again, liabilities take money out of your pocket. So liability, it's an expense, and then into the void. Cool. So the arrows in the diagrams represent the flow of cash, or cash flow. Numbers alone mean little, just as words out of context mean little. It's a story that counts. In financial reporting, reading numbers is looking for the plot, story of where the cash is flowing. In 80% of most families, the financial story paints a picture of hard work to get ahead. However, this effort is for naught because they spend their lives buying liabilities instead of assets. And we all know the saying, work smart, not hard. This is the cash flow pattern of a poor person. So you see here, guys, the person has a job, goes to their salary, they have their expenses through taxes, rent, food, transportation, clothes, simple stuff, and then the money just goes out, and it goes to the void, you never see it again, and they have no, as you can see, they have no assets, and they have no liabilities. So very simple, that's poor person. Let's see the middle class person. So this is where most people fit. So they have their job, they get paid their salary, and then they end up getting liabilities, and then see here how they have no assets, right? So there's no stocks, there's no real estate or bonds or anything. They only have their mortgage, car loans, credit card debt, school loans, and that makes up their expenses. So taxes, mortgage payment from the mortgage, car payment from the car loan, so on and so forth. And yeah, you see here they don't really have any assets. So how are they ever gonna? There's nothing putting money in their pocket. There's just stuff taking money out of their pocket. Not ideal, right? So again, now let's see. This is the cash flow pattern of a rich person. So here, first thing you notice is they have no job. Their assets, not is their job, but it is their income source, as you see. So again, rental income comes from owning real estate. Dividends come from owning stocks, so on and so forth, right? And then they do have expenses, they do have liabilities, but the idea is to grow your asset column so much that it just you're able to afford liabilities. And some liabilities can be good, like having mortgages. Anyway, it's more in the book, it's more in depth. I won't get into it now, but there's something called good debt and bad debt. Let's continue. So again, but more money will often not solve the problem. In fact, it may compound the problem. Money often makes obvious our tragic human flaws, putting a spotlight on what we don't know. That is why, all too often, a person comes into a sudden windfall of cash. Let's say an inheritance, a pay raise, or lottery winnings, soon returns to the same financial mess, if not worse, than the mess they were in before. Money only accentuates the cash flow pattern running in your head. If the pattern is to spend everything you get, most likely an increase in cash will just result in an increase in spending. Thus the saying, a fool and his money is one big party. So cash flow tells the story of how a person handles money. How the quest of a financial dream turns into a financial nightmare. So I'm not trying to read the entire book for you guys, but this example will really kind of nail my point that I was trying to make earlier. So the classic story of hardworking people has a set pattern. Recently married, the happy, highly educated young couple moves into one of their cramped, rented apartments. Immediately they realize that they are saving money because two can live as cheaply as one. Pretty awesome so far. So the problem is the apartment is cramped. They decide to save money to buy their dream home so they can have kids. Now they have two incomes and they begin focusing on their careers. Their incomes begin to increase. Again, pretty good so far. As their income goes, their expenses go up as well. Okay, not so good. So again, income goes up, expenses go up as well. As a result of their incomes increasing, they decide to buy the house of their dreams. Once in their house, they have a new tax called property tax. Then they buy a new car, new furniture, and new appliances to match their new house. all of a sudden they wake up to their liabilities column and are full of. They wake up and their liabilities column is full of mortgage and credit card debt. Their liabilities go up. So you can see this, guys. Income goes up, expenses go up, and then liabilities cause expenses to go up even higher. They're now trapped in the rat race. Pretty soon a baby comes along and they work even harder. The process repeats itself. Higher incomes cause higher taxes. A credit card comes in the mail. They use it and max it out. A loan company calls and says their greatest asset, their home, has appreciated in value, which we'll get to in a second. Their neighbor calls to invite them to go shopping. The Memorial Day sale is on. They promise themselves they'll just go window shopping, but they take their credit card just in case. I run into this young couple all the time. Their names change, but their financial dilemma is the same. They come to one of my talks and hear what I have to say. They ask me, can you tell us how to make more money? What they don't understand is their problem or their trouble is really how they choose to spend the money that they do have. It is caused by financial illiteracy and not understanding the difference between an asset and a liability. More money seldom solves someone's money problems. Intelligence solves problems. There is a saying of a friend of mine that says over and over to people in debt, if you find you have dug yourself into a hole, stop digging. So you see here, guys, how it's really easy to just fall into that hole without even realizing it, and then you dig and dig and dig until the hole's too big, and then you spend years trying to get out of it, and then whereas you never had to dig that hole to begin with, right? So again, it's a simple idea, assets, liabilities, but it's not as simple as you think. Now, one other thing I want to show you guys is Robert Kiyosaki has his own theory when it comes to homes not being so a lot of people, they say, is my home is my best investment or my biggest investment. And as you see here, where he said, see how here says the great asset in what do you call it, quotations? So listen to this. A person can be highly educated, professionally successful, and financially illiterate. All right, so what does he mean by this? So one day my dad told me that our home was his greatest investment. A not too pleasant argument took place when I showed him why I thought a house was not a good investment. So I myself have tried to, use this argument with people, and I'm never able to kind of sell it. So let's see what it says in the book here. So rich dad says the liability, poor dad. The rich dad, poor dad are kind of, so he had, just to give you an idea, he had two dads growing up. He had his real dad, which was his poor dad, and then his friend's dad was rich, and then his rich dad taught him lessons, whereas his poor dad was telling him bad lessons. So rich dad would say your house is a liability, and then poor dad would say it was an asset. Above diagram illustrates the difference in perception between my rich dad and my poor dad when it came to their homes. One dad thought his house was an asset, and the other dad thought it was a liability. I remember when I drew the following diagram for my dad, showing him the direction of the cash flow. I also showed him the ancillary expenses that went along with owning the home. A bigger home and bigger expenses, and the cash flow kept going out through the expense column. So you see here, mortgage, property tax, insurance, maintenance, utilities, going right into the void. Today, people still challenge me on the idea of a house not being an asset. I know for many people it is their dream as well as their largest investment, and owning your home is better than nothing. I simply offered an alternate way of looking at this popular dogma. If my wife and I were to buy a bigger, flashier house, we realize it wouldn't be an asset. It would be a liability since it would take money out of our pocket. When it comes to houses, most people work all their lives paying for a home they never own. In other words, most people buy a house every few years, each time incurring a new 30-year loan to pay off the previous one. Houses do not always go up in value. I have friends who owe $1 million for a home that would today sell for far less. And the greatest losses of all are those from missed opportunities. If all your money is tied up in your house, you may be forced to work harder because your money continues blowing out of the expense column instead of adding to the asset column, the classic middle-class cash flow pattern. If a young couple would put more money into their asset column early on, their later years would be easier. Their assets would have grown and would be available to help cover expenses. All too often, a house only serves as a vehicle for incurring a home equity loan to pay for mounting expenses. And again, in summary, loss of time, where you could have been having other assets that have been growing, loss of additional income, so money that you're making from work just to maintain those expenses of the home, and loss of education. Again, when you don't have money to invest, then that's also, when you're investing, you're also gaining the experience. And when you're not investing, you don't gain that education that you only learn from experience. And even for me, that I've only been doing this for a few months now, but again, just the amount of experience that I know personally is invaluable. Just like I wouldn't replace it for anything. So Anyway, I'm not saying don't buy a house. What I'm saying is that you should understand the difference between asset and liability. Again, the point of this entire video. When I want a bigger house, I first buy assets that will generate the cash flow to pay for the house. So imagine 20, 30 years down the line, and you have a bunch of assets, and you made smart decisions your entire, young adult life, and then later on you have all that money coming in your income, and all of a sudden you have all this money that you can now even reinvest into more assets, or do whatever you want. You can, again, live your dreams, or buy that bigger house, as it says here, or whatever it may be. So that's pretty much. Oh, yeah, this as well. So why the rich get richer. So you can see here they're buying assets. Because they're buying assets, their income is going up. Because their income is going up, then their liabilities are going down. And because their liabilities are going down, their expenses are going down. It's a compound effect. And compounding is something really big when it comes to investing. I'll talk about it in another video. But the more and more assets you get, the more and more income you're getting, the smaller and smaller your expenses are becoming. And the reverse goes for a poor person, which is lower down here. But why does the middle class struggle? Income goes up, expenses go up, and because they're buying liabilities instead of assets, therefore, again, their expenses are going up. So if you follow what the masses do, you will get the following picture. So you work for the company, whatever company you work for, whatever job you do, whatever, you work for them. And then your expenses are, you work for the government, so you got to pay your taxes, right? So you're working for the company, you're working for the government, and then you're paying off your mortgage, and you're working for the bank too. So look at all these people you're working for. Are you even working for yourself? So again, this book gets way more deep into that area. I'm not going to get into this video, but totally recommend this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe down there. And if you guys have any questions or want to see me do something differently, or have a topic that you want me to talk about, or any criticism whatsoever, please let me know. I don't shy away from that at all. So in the comments below, guys, and thank you so much for watching.